This is the Sips and Dad Tips episode where I've brought out the big guns. I am having a glass of scotch. Neat. Cannot give the brand name because I'm not being sponsored yet. Maybe one day, who knows? But I need this type of drink because today we're talking puberty and all the awkward conversations or potentially awkward conversations that can go along with that. And as dads, it might be our job to do things, but there are also some single parents out there who may lack a father figure in their kid's life to be able to share a one-on-one conversation between two guys with. So it can be up to the mum now to have a conversation that is potentially pretty awkward, and when you don't really know what to say, I think it just makes it a lot harder. So this episode was inspired by one of our community members, Lynx, who suggested that I do an episode where it's kind of like advice tips for solo mums with boys, because she's recently had to do a whole conversation into the whole sex, boners, consent chat with her son, and it was horrendous. There's a puberty book, but it kind of wanted to have more of a dad chat kind of vibe to it, with the father not in the picture and a few close family members unable to get around anytime soon. And it being the time where that conversation has come up, she just wants some tips and maybe some different ways to look at it, I guess. So let's talk about it. Let's have an awkward conversation together. And I think this can be awkward because of generational awkwardness. There's a part of me that thinks it's weird that for something that affects everybody at one stage has to go through puberty and that awkward stage where things are changing, they don't know what to expect, and parents not knowing what to say or how to say it is so surprising when you look at it from the outside as like a general rule for humans. Why is it so awkward for us to talk about these things, these private things? Is it because it's private? Is it because, for generations, maybe it's sort of a taboo subject to even be able to talk about certain things, use certain words, terminologies? I don't know. I personally, this question made me think, and I don't think I ever personally really had a one-on-one sit-down chat with my parents about specific things. I think for me, the school was involved a lot. We had a few sex ed classes at school, and we had them from a very early age, with our family there, talking about the basics. And I think that's one of the main things that I jotted down here is we got to keep things age appropriate. So when you're younger, it's maybe more general things that, kids aren't going to worry too much about hair growing on them when they're like 8 years old. They're maybe not really, or even younger, ready for that conversation yet, or even take any information in. But when it starts to actually happen, that's probably where their ears will prick up, or they really take in, even if they're quite shy or awkward about it, things like that developing, they'll be like, they'll relate to it. And so that information is for them. So I think the most important thing is, and the fact that everyone experiences different changes at different ages, different stages, it's sort of got to be a bit more of a personal thing, to personal judgment as to what sort of things come up. And I personally, like I said, didn't really experience this as a kid, and I haven't experienced it yet as a father. So this is my, wondering as well. And I thought it'd be cool to talk through some of these things, get your feedback as well. So anyone here who wants to contribute to this, I would love some either feedback on my ideas, give me some of your own ideas, things to avoid, anything, just leave them in the comments of the episode. On Spotify, I can see them. I'm not sure about other platforms. Otherwise, you can submit through the Google Doc or DM me on any one of my socials. All the links will be in the description. Like I said, you can comment on Spotify. I'll see it on YouTube as well, and I'll reply to everyone. Or, if you want to be private, you can DM me privately or email. It's up to you. But because I'm experiencing this I will experience this for the first time, I'm sure soon, the awkward chats. So I don't think it should be one big chat and that's it. I think that's probably a mistake to think about it as, when you have a chat about the birds and the bees and, all the things that'll be changing, it's going to be one and done. And it's one conversation, that's it. You got to get out all the information. And if you miss something, well, it's hard to sit back down and do it all again. I think one of the best things you could probably do, and like I said, every kid is different. So you're going to have to tailor it to your kid's personality. Can they take a full-on conversation about, private parts by using the specific names? Will they get embarrassed? Will they get shy? Will they turn off? Are they mature enough to handle it? Maybe some families don't even use proper terminology. All that kind of thing. How to approach a conversation with your kid is very personal, and it should be personal. I wouldn't say that this is going to be one conversation per se. I wouldn't think that it's like a one and done conversation and, have this one talk and that's it. I think you kind of want a constant dialogue and to be able to reassure your kids when different things pop up and happen that, it's okay and, this is normal and, maybe bring up something that's going to happen to them. Oh yeah, you're starting to grow hair under your arms. BO is going to start soon. I don't know exactly how you would have the conversation. Hopefully it can be a bit lighter. I think that would be, I remember as a kid myself, if I was to try and have these conversations, I would probably want them to be more on the lighter, potentially more casual tones and not like a formal, interview where you're getting grilled for questions or you're getting information spewed at you and it's like super serious. Because whilst it is serious, it is just a fact of life that everyone's going to have to go through this, and it will happen and things happen. And, we've all been through it. We've all been through it, and we don't want to be embarrassed by, calling too much attention and seriousness to something. Like, I think when you make it too serious, it becomes embarrassing. And we're embarrassed enough to talk about it or try and listen to our parents talk about things. So we don't want to make it too awkward. But I think, the person who asked this question, they've already had some good dialogue with their son about the female side of, changes and periods and things like that, which is really cool. I think not a lot of teenage boys or even guys in general ever really learn about that kind of stuff. I remember being in sex ed class. I think it was like 12 years old, and it was that prime time. We had a big group conversation about the reproductive cycle and all this kind of thing of how long it takes for kids to be born, what happens, and all that. You know how it goes. But then there was a point where I vividly remember this, where all the girls were asked to leave the room, and one of the teachers went with them, one of the female teachers, and I guess they spoke about all the female side of things. And then as soon as the girls left, it was all the guys in one room and a male teacher and whoever was running the talk, and we started talking about more of some of the guy side of issues, but we didn't learn exactly what the girls were learning about. And that might have been separation because of embarrassment, but I still think it would have been better if they kind of explained the female side of things. So for your son to be learning about the female side of things, that's amazing. That's great. And learning sensitivity to that's perfect. That'll hold him in good stead for the future for sure. Especially when it comes time to dating and settling down or whatever it is. He's going to be well versed in what to expect and how to be a bit more sensitive to that kind of thing. But in terms of the male stuff, obviously, if you're a single mum and you're trying to explain what's going to happen as a male, yes, it can feel awkward because you haven't experienced that. But also at the same time, it's not always that. I think your son's going to need clear step-by-step advice or things that could happen. There are books, whether you own, I think you said you own a book, I think one of the helpful ones that we had in science class or whatever we had, and you inevitably go to the sex and reproduction side of things, and there's graphs there which will have like different stages or like different age ranges and a list of things that potentially could be happening, whether it's early on it's growth spurts, hair coming, and then later on it might be voice change thing, and they put them in little columns. And whilst even through personal experience they were never really completely accurate, it gives a good breakdown, I guess, of the things to expect. But I think I don't think it's maybe a whole conversation you need to have to say these are the things that's going to happen, this is when they're going to happen, and make a big deal out of it. Like maybe every once in a while it comes up, be like, yo, you're going through a huge growth spurt, and then tie that back into after you get a bit of a growth spurt, you'll probably end up starting to, I don't know, whatever the next stage is, maybe your voice is getting deeper. Or you can, I think one of the better ways you could try this, if a direct conversation doesn't work, is to bring up, even as a dad, maybe I could bring up, and as a mum you could bring up other guys that you've seen, other experiences that you've seen other people go through. So it could be like, for me, I think when my kids get to this stage, I might say something like, I remember when there was a kid giving a presentation in front of the class, and his voice just broke and squeaked, and all of a sudden he was really embarrassed because his voice went kind of creaky for a couple of minutes, and it was super embarrassing. But then it was my turn because I was going through the same thing, and so you don't really laugh at someone because you understand that you're going to go through it. Or it's sort of tying it into, you watch other people go through certain things, so it's kind of normalizing it a little bit. It's not just you going through it, it's all the guys around you, all the girls around you are going through their own changes as well. You could relate that back to the girl side of things and bring it up, like, girls might get their first period while they're sitting in class. And, if you want to bring up the awkward boners, they happen in class, everyone's been there. That's the guy side of things that happen. And, it's completely normal. I do try and think back to when I was that age, learning and hearing about people talk about awkward boners. I don't think that was much of a thing. I don't think anyone really spoke about that. I think if you wanted something to laugh about, one of the hardest, I don't mean to say the hardest parts, but I did not mean that. That's not a play on words. But one of the most awkward parts is when you're asked to come up in front of the class and talk, and the timing is bad. You can't get up, particularly in secret, covertly, because of things that are out of your control happening. It might be good to reinforce perspective, like whilst it feels so awkward and can be terrible or very embarrassing, once you get older and everyone's gone through it, you kind of look back and laugh at some of that stuff. I think maybe having an uncle, I know you mentioned some guy friends, some uncles as well. I think that is awesome too, if not to have the awkward talks, to have the casual laughs. A little bit of teasing can help break the ice. And there's certain conversations you can have with other family members or other older men in your life. It could be your dad's friends, it could be family friends, it could be grandparents, like maybe not grandparents so much, it depends on the age, but they can have this sort of frank, joking conversation that it just doesn't happen sometimes in a parent-kid dynamic, where it could be poking fun at themselves, and it's just easier to laugh with with an uncle about an awkward boner than it would be with your dad, I think, sometimes. And it's not the end of the world that maybe as dads we can't share that complete conversation about all these topics with our kids. The conversations with uncles and family friends, they don't have to be full-on conversations. They can be on more of the casual side. That can help a ton. I would be very confident in saying that there are some topics which kids just don't want to talk about with their parents, whether it's mum or dad. And even with adults in general, I think there will be there will be a lot of times where privacy and just leaving them alone to figure out themselves will be just as important as being able to explain things. So as long as they're not harming themselves, I think you mentioned masturbation and talking about contraception and things like that. I think, like I said, if you catch them with a girlfriend or a partner or whatever, that's a great time to bring up contraception and the importance of it, and what could happen if they do get somebody else pregnant, whether it be diseases or being a dad at 13 years old. It could be any one of those topics, but whatever hits home, you're going to have to be the judge of what is the most important thing to bring up at that time. Talking about their own personal time, it's probably going to be a matter of privacy. I reckon no matter what relationship a parent has with their kids, I personally can't see any world where they're comfortable having a conversation about masturbation with their parents. I could be completely wrong on that. I just don't think, for me, that would ever be a thing that I would in any world be comfortable talking about with my parents. Even now as adults, even now. That could be just from the way I was brought up, my experience. I don't think, I would never have felt comfortable with that. And I'm not sure how it was like for other people. I could be completely off. I just feel like that's one of those self-discovery things where you figured it out, you've seen it on a movie, I don't know, it comes up in conversation with friends. You hear someone else talking about having done something like that and you want to try for yourself. It's not really, I think the pressure maybe that we put ourselves under to have all the answers isn't something that's necessary, because I don't think you need to be able to provide all the answers sometimes, especially if they're not going to be asked of you or wanted. That's the other thing. I think it's hard to judge when things are going to be welcomed with our kids at that age, especially when things are going to be welcomed by them or even heard. We could be telling them all the information that they ever need to hear, but whether they can actually hear it, either because of the age they're at or the maturity level, or they're just not open to listening. Sometimes, all the time maybe, we don't have control over that. And I know that I'm going to feel stress over that kind of situation too, because there's going to be a point where we have to just let it go and accept that we can't help them in some stages. That's something I've heard a lot of older parents, people who have raised teenagers and stuff already, just talk about how you just can't help sometimes. You just have to trust that they're going to be able to figure it out on their own, and that they're going to get through it with or without your help. Which sucks in a way, but it's just part of life, I guess. And I personally don't go in the expectation that when it's going to be that stage for me and my kids that I'm going to have to talk about everything with them. I'm well aware that there's the internet and schools, influencers, other kids and uncles, other family members that will also get involved directly, indirectly, learning from observation and through joking around with their friends. Googling things, and it's going to happen. They're going to be looking up things and finding out for themselves a lot of the time. And I'm not going to be pretending that that won't happen. So I think the most important thing is to maybe to try not to feel the pressure that it's all on you. And that's probably easier said than done. But I really hope that, maybe that can help, having the ability to take the pressure off yourself. Hopefully that helps. But I do remember a lot of reading about it, books from school, books at other people's houses, like staying over at my grandparents' house, and all my aunties and uncles' old school books would be there with, it was 70s diagrams and 70s pictures. And so it was a little bit different, but still I was curious and I read through them. And that's probably a cool thing. Maybe sometimes you don't have to have a full-on conversation. Just leave some source materials somewhere that they're going to find. And sometimes keeping out of the kids' way, potentially. I know we probably want to meddle a little bit more when it's our kids and try and keep them safe and, are you okay? And really trying to bring stuff out of them. But sometimes just knowing that you're there and not pushing them and some comfortable silence might be all that they need for that day, for that week, for that stage. But yeah, it's trying to normalize the weirdness was another one. Probably ties into being able to joke about that stuff, joke about whatever is happening. Someone's voice breaking in front of the class, or awkward boners, and having a laugh at that can maybe normalize how messy and awkward this stage is, and that it's okay that stuff like that happens. It's actually normal, and it's not like life isn't completely smooth, and this awkward stage is going to be awkward for everybody. So it's not always about physical changes either. You can really tie it into being emotional. Guys can maybe get more aggressive as the testosterone starts to kick in, grumpy, mood swings, all that kind of stuff. I think showing understanding as well, not going too hard on your kids if they're having a bad day, and trying to talk to them as more of an adult than as a kid. That was one thing my parents did start to reinforce a lot when I was getting to that, preteen, teenage years, was that they wanted, and they openly would say to me, we want to talk to you. We don't want to talk to you like you're a little kid anymore. We want to be able to talk to you like you're an adult, and that you're responsible, and that, we don't have to baby you anymore. And when you get to that age, that is something I liked hearing. It was awesome to know that I wasn't going to be babied anymore. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be treated more like an adult. And, being able to talk on equal terms rather than them up here and me down here was something my parents really reinforced in a lot of conversations. And a lot of times, if I did something wrong and I was in trouble, if times were good and nothing wrong was happening, they would always, maybe at the start of the conversation, hey, you're not a kid anymore. We don't want to talk to you like you're a baby. Can you go clean your room? Or, things like that. Or like, you're not a kid anymore, and we know that you get upset at things, and it's your hormones could be going crazy, and you get upset at things you don't mean to get upset at. I get it. Just something, it's hard to say specifics. I wish I had all the answers, and I'm not sure anyone really does. But I think questions too, keeping an open dialogue, asking how their crush is, how's things with that girl, or how's things, with your friend who was having an awkward time at school, or whatever it is. Hopefully hopefully, all the work that you've done beforehand, building a relationship, being able to talk about awkward things and maybe harder conversations than some other people have had with their kids, has put in sort of like the foundation that it makes this time slightly easier than it would be if you didn't. But yeah, I think the biggest thing would be not trying to make it one big conversation. You can space this out over months and years, and certain things at certain times. It might be the perfect time to bring up girlfriends at when you catch him making out with a girl or something, or that might be the catalyst for a conversation about safe sex when he starts closing the room with a girl in there or something like that. Obviously not in front of him. Wait till the girlfriend goes home. Don't embarrass him too much. But I think it's, even if you just want to reinforce that you're there, if you have a question about something, you can always ask me. It's just a bit of reassurance, because a lot of the time it's not maybe an answer that they need to get through a stage of puberty. It could be just knowing that you're there, and knowing that if they need to talk about it, you're there, and that they're safe and they're not going to get in trouble if something fucks up, or they cut themselves shaving. That everything will be okay. I'm not sure if this podcast episode has gone well, or if it's just a lot of awkward rambling. Not that I don't awkwardly ramble most of the other episodes, but even if I did so more often than not in this episode, I apologize. If you're still here listening, let me know. It'll make me feel a lot better, okay? Because I deserve the rest of this scotch. But I think that's the end of this week's episode. I'll catch you guys next week. Stay in contact, stay in touch. I would love to hear from you guys and get to know you guys a bit more. So let me know, and thank you so much for being here. I'll catch you next week.